5.
There we go.
Thank you.
Don't forget. What time is it?
Oh, we have. Oh, did she want Chinatown? Did you want this?
Okay. Can I move
Okay,
that
so-
over to?
So I'm right down there. All right, graduate to I just got this now.
Yeah, let's do that.
And she comes as
I
the
will
president of
let,
Maryland chapter of the
Dr.
American.
You.
One person right here. Yeah, Monique when she comes in.
Oh, space bar. Okay.
Dr.
Okay, we are live on YouTube, guys.
Don't bring it to me. It's like
Larry Hogan's Go-Backs Ambassadors, recording, television, and social media public service, radio spot, television interviews, and education.
what is happening?
Over-
Oh, I'm sorry.
from
Wait, we can't say this to like remember that.
So now,
I think we're gonna have to introduce ourselves. Or, yeah.
Is this the one in pink?
Pink. Thank you.
oh, wait.
What?
And then
UPS. Yeah. 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 Oh, okay. BRIDGET.
Oh, what else? Competing.
Okay.
Well, there's the Maryland ballot one.
And then there's one at Bellsville at the town hall.
Yes. Thank you.
Really, I didn't hear about that one. At the fire.
Yeah.
Overman, right?
Oberman.
Okay, and Eli Ward. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yep. What is people? How do people name mostly pronounce? Sule. That's what I was thinking. Sule. Swallow. No, but it's from.
No.
Oh well, connection. That's the snowball thing. But it's snowballs. That's right. Yeah, New York. We just have Italian ice. Italian ice. That's a good thing. It is good. I do like it. But New Orleans and Baltimore, the snowball. I haven't think about that. Okay, so Dr. Monique. Yeah, I can see where people would say Soleil. That is, I got.
I'm gonna just use the crop so you can take the paper. That is it.
Okay, that's fine. So we're waiting for one more person, which will be Mina Bryant. We're not related. I know because if I say Bryant, but she'll just jump in over here.
Okay.
So basically, we have someone doing an intro. Janet will come in and introduce myself, and then I will go and introduce the panel. I probably will, if Mina's not here, I probably won't mention her yet. I'll just say that she's on her way, and then when she jumps in, I'll do that. Yeah, and then after I introduce the panel, we're gonna go right into you, Dr. Burke, and Dr. Burke is gonna go through her slides and kick us off, and then as soon as you finish, then I'll jump back on, and we will start the conversation from there. Okay. So this will set the tone, giving some facts and background on social media. I don't know if you guys are. Were you on the conference call?
I was not. I was actually in school. Yeah, I was
You was
in
in school.
Yeah.
That was to say. So that would make sense. So basically, just so during the conference call, we were just kind of discussing just the flow, but we wanted to save time for people to have questions. So people are going to be asking questions online. They're going to be filtering in, and obviously, I guess the people that are here, from what I was told, a lot of more people are online, which is great. So we want to have room for them to, answer their questions and really go over a few that we went over. Hi.
Great idea.
It's the 4 of us, and it's going to be 5. I don't know when that person comes through. Should we get closer, or are you okay?
No, I was like, I didn't know when it was stopping or anything.
Oh yeah, the 5th person's coming. So yeah.
Ready?
Yes, we're ready.
I'm already waiting.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight. I know we've got a number in person here and probably several watching online as well, so we're looking forward to a really good discussion. My name's Melissa Wiedenhofer. I work for WUMCO Help, an assistance organization here in town, and we are thrilled to be co-sponsoring this event with the town of Poolesville and partnering with Up County Prevention Network, UPN, who is going to be helping us get the panelist discussion going, and just really looking forward to it. Did want to let you know no one will be on camera today. Even if you have a question to ask or whatnot, you won't make the big screen. So enjoy your time, and have a nice evening.
Making music. Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for joining us online. We appreciate it. I just want to take a moment to say we're very grateful to have a wonderful panel of specialists and those that have lived experience to come and talk to us about kids and mental health and social media. So my name is Janet Hosford Lamb. I'm a local mental health professional here in the town of Poolesville. And I do want to take a second to introduce Anita Bryant. Anita Bryant is a versatile, creative communication and marketing professional with experience across diverse sectors like entertainment, nonprofit, government, and academia. A true think tank, she excels in connecting ideas and strategies to deliver results-driven experiences. Anita believes in the power of community, connection, and impact as the driving forces behind a healthy society. And we're just thrilled to meet Anita, and it's been a joy working with Anita in this process. So Anita, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And I'm going to pass the mic over to you.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm thankful for being here. We're going to have a really open discussion about social media and wellness, and mainly social media with our young people and teens. So we're going to dive right into it. We're going to first start off with one of our guests. I'm going to introduce everyone. We're going to start with Dr. Monique Swallow Burke, and the president of the Maryland chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and practicing general pediatrician at the Pediatric Center in Columbia, Maryland. A graduate of Tulane University and University Medical School, and she moved to Baltimore in 1999. That's when I actually graduated from Morgan.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have some connection.
Supposed to be here for 3 years, and I've been here for 25. Yes.
Wow, yes, and see how that happens? And she has been, she completed her residency at Johns Hopkins Medical School of Medicine, where she continues to hold a faculty appointment. She currently serves as the president of the Maryland chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, chair of the State Advisory Commission on Vaccination, member of the Maryland Department of Health Pediatric Vaccine Work Group, Advisory Council on Health and Physical Education, and Practice Issues Commission. You are very busy.
Just like every other working mom in this room.
Yes, you are. And Dr. Burke also recently served as one of the Maryland Governor's Larry Hogan's Go Vax ambassadors, recording television and social media public service announcements, radio spots, and television interviews to educate and encourage COVID vaccination in Maryland's youngest residents. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we're going to move on down to Bridget Oberman. Bridget is a resident here in Poolesville. She is a high school graduate of class of 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you.
She'll be going to Dickerson University. Am I-
Dickinson, yep.
Dixon? Oh, did I say it right?
Dickinson College.
Dickerson, yes. Dickerson College. She has lived experience with social media and is here to share her thoughts around social media and how it impacts teens. So we thank you.
Of course.
And we have Eli Ward, who is also here in Poolesville, is a high school sophomore, and she has seen the firsthand effects of social media in teens and young adults. So thank you for being here as well. We have one more guest, so when they come in, I will introduce them. So we're going to first start with Dr. Burke, who has put together a wonderful presentation that will kick off our conversation. And she put together some information about social media in teens and really about digital media overall and our wellness and how it impacts our mental health. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. First, I just want to thank you all for having me tonight. This is my first time in Poolesville, which I was really excited about. I was saying it's more rural than I thought it was going to be, just because I've been on the other side of Montgomery County for most of my visits. And I just want to really just tell you how excited I am to be part of this really esteemed panel with Anita and all of her incredible experience, and really, truly with these two wonderful young people. I'm a pediatrician first, foremost, and always. The only thing that is more about me than being a pediatrician is being the mom of a teenager. So I have a 16-year-old daughter. And I just want us, as parents, as I tell kids all the time in my office, for us to think about this. It's really hard to be a kid right now. The really almost really just difficult situations that we've had in our, over the last 5 years, with the pandemic and with everything changing and with social media. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but I just want to really take my hat off to you two. So proud to be up here with you and for sharing your experience. Just know that we are all so incredibly proud of you, and just what a really great experience and how honored I am to be sharing this stage with you tonight.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get down to it. So I'm just going to talk, one of the things that in my introduction, which I clearly need to abbreviate,
Fine.
one of the things we're talking about children's digital media is from the American Academy of Pediatrics is we were very lucky to get, I have no disclosures, I have no affiliations, nothing to talk about except my affiliation as being the mother of a teenager. So this was a really cool thing. The AAP now has a Center of Excellence on Social Media and Youth Mental Health. So last year, the AAP was awarded this really large 5-year grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through the SAMHSA to really establish this National Center of Excellence for Social Media and Mental Wellness. Really, truly, we were excited to get this grant. I'm lucky to surround myself every day with incredible pediatricians. Are great people, and are truly, truly dedicated to the power of children and adolescents, and really helping them to manage their development and really to support parents, right? So that's what we're really talking about tonight, is how can we as adults support and create an environment that is really good for our kids, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to give a background about social media. I'm looking around the room here, and I'm guessing it's probably similar online. There are a lot of parents, probably parents of teenagers. So some of these things that we're going to talk about tonight, I think the parents will relate to a little bit more than our wonderful young people that we have up here. So there are 3 main goals: are improving pediatric mental well-being by reducing risk and leveraging the benefits, right? When we talk about social media, particularly as parents, we spend a lot of time talking about all the negative part of social media. And I'm going to be honest with you, part of it's because we just don't understand. We don't understand the importance of it and realize that there actually are a lot of positive aspects too. So looking at social media and changing that in digital media in particular to not an all or nothing, right? How can we find a balance that we know is going to be supportive of their development, but yet is going to enable them to still talk with their friends and plan organizational meetings and all these other things that are happening. So the other thing too is, as pediatricians, much to my husband and I have this debate all the time about whether I'm really a scientist or not. I say I am, but we really work on data, right? So the thing that we're looking for now is, this is so early that there's not a lot of great data. And some of the data that we're looking at, as we all know, can be interpreted depending on how you want to look at it. So I think the real answer for that is, right now we don't really have a great answer. So we're just talking about a little bit about screen time. We're talking about families' importance for content, for quality and not just quantity. And then what can we do? What are some strategies we can do to help us? So this is one of my favorite slides, and this is something that you can show to parents, adolescents, grandparents, everybody who is involved in your adolescent or your child's life. This is the time to reach 50 million global users, okay? For the radio, it took 38 years. TV, 14 years. Internet, 4 years. Facebook, 3.5 years, right? So we're talking about Facebook, something that we think, oh yeah, that's been, went around really fast. Look at the bottom one, Pokemon Go, 19 days. So we're going from something that basically when we were talking about television, and I think most of us that in this room that grew up with television, our grandparents were like, oh, that TV's evil, right? You're spending too much time doing TV. We had 38 years, we had 14 years to get used to TV and to kind of try to figure this out. 19 days. So this is what I'm talking about. Things happen very quickly in the digital environment, and just thinking about how we're going to go from there. So this is kind of the same slide, but I love it. It's very, very, very busy. But it's talking about how long it took for 100% of households to have something, right? So if you just pick one of those, like that dotted line for electricity, it really wasn't until like 1950. From 1900 to 1950, it took 50 years. We're talking about digital media and cell phones. Cell phones there, it literally took like 2 years or something. So it's just, we're in a very rapid turnover right now, and thinking about things on that kind of aspect, I think, can be helpful. And for me, I know it's always helpful for me to kind of step back. I'm all about comparisons. It makes me understand it better, So this is talking about content and platforms, right? The thing that I like to tell my patients' parents is, we and in the AAP, we talk a lot about supporting parents and about ways that you can monitor how much time they're on their computers and how much time they're on their phones and what digital media sites they're going to. And those are all really important. Now I'm going to put on my mom hat, and I'm going to tell you, there is literally nothing that I could figure out that she can't figure out better than I can. Right? Like, there are ways around most of these things. And I have a really great kid. She's a wonderful little teenager, but she clearly knows more about this than I do. So we need to think about how we can talk about this as families, and we can come to conclusions that everybody can agree about and think about as a reasonable thing. So what are the links? Now, this is where we start looking at things. This is this meta-analysis, which is basically when we take all the studies that are out there across the entire world, and we kind of try to put them all together and look at the data and see what it shows. And, they're like, oh, is it sleep problems, language delays, behavior issues, weight gain? Maybe. Looking at this, it's hard to tell, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Are kids who are more likely to not sleep well up on their phones? Are kids who are less likely to spend time outside playing more likely to use social media and be more sedentary? So it's really hard to say. And the most recent data basically shows that for the population as a whole, there's not great data to show associations between significant mental health changes in children and social media use. Now, as I tell my patients and my families all the time, just because it doesn't affect everyone in the population as a whole doesn't mean that it's not infecting an individual. So on the individual level, that's where we really have to look at it. I think there's different levels for us to intervene, but individual level is as what we care about as parents, right? So there are just a couple important concepts that I want for everybody to share, and this really goes with any kind of digital media you're looking at. You are what you eat. Right? I talked to one of my ongoing situations that I've had personally with my office social media with particular adolescent girls, is a lot of my adolescent girls who have eating disorders. There are several kind of different platforms that go through a lot of things with this, and it can be really, really difficult. So if you think about this, social media is really not going anywhere, right? So it's not like our solution to this is that we have to give it up, as my mom used to say, cold turkey, right? You just have to stop it and never use it again, because it's not going to happen. So we need to learn how to eat our fruits and veggies and only have cake sometimes, right? Like Cookie Monster says that cookies are sometimes food. That's the same kind of thing that we want to think about with social media. Why is it hard to stop? Now, I was not on social media at all until I opened a business with one of my patients. And she refused to call me by my first name because I'd been her pediatrician for 20 years. And so she'd only call me by my last name. And she said, Burke, if we're going to have a business, you have to get on Instagram. So I did. And then you can't stop once you get on Instagram. It's not just as an adult, right? It's and some of it is not our fault. So that's kind of another level that we talk about at the American Academy of Pediatrics, is how can we talk about getting the proper controls in place. It's kind of like when the kids are little and you take them bowling and you put up the little lane bumpers, right? So that the ball can just bump from side to side. That's what we need. We need bumpers so that not only children, but us as adults aren't into these kind of algorithms to just constantly run and never get to the end, and can sometimes, unfortunately, lead particularly adolescents down kind of rabbit holes that are not safe for their mental health or their physical health. Last things that we talk about, just quickly remembering that no one size fits all, that we really should not try much to use social media to regulate our emotions, right? Because they are very reactive, and particularly in adolescence, developmentally, a lot of these kind of algorithms and things like that are not meant for their developing brains. They just physically don't have the ability to make those kind of decisions, and we need to work on that. And then the last thing is connection versus disruption. Now, it's not just the kids that we have to talk about with social media, right? We also have to talk about parents. Making sure that when your child is talking to you, that you're stopping what you're doing on your phone and actually listening to them and having conversations. We were watching a family movie the other night, and my husband and I were checking something on our phones, and my daughter stood up and said, "Okay, screenagers, get off the phones, like we're having family movie night." So it doesn't go one way, right, guys? Yeah. It's a two-way street.
That's right.
So really talking about advertising revenue, I want us all to kind of think about this, and I'm sure that these slides will be available. We can get to everyone, but it's important that we just look at the fact that some of this is just really not our fault, right? It's kind of the same thing that, unfortunately, and I hate to make comparisons, but tobacco companies, other things with advertising, and they want you to stay on. The longer that you stay on, the more ads you see, the more revenue that they make. So all of it's not always bad for us. But remember, some of it's positive and not all bad too, because sometimes when I get that pop-up ad for learning how to embroider and I didn't know I needed to do that, and that can be really relaxing for me. So hard to stop things, the autoplay, and that's really, really hard. If you talk about for smaller kids, a lot of times they have developmental difficulty transitioning. Right? Even if you have teenagers, I think teenagers have trouble transitioning sometimes too, honestly. I think I do too. But, when you tell them, oh, it's time to go from the playground, and then you have an absolute meltdown. Or you tell your adolescent, okay, it's time to go. I know you've been with your friends all afternoon, but it's time we have to go. It's difficult. And this is the same kind of thing that these engagement prolongations, they make those transitions difficult too. Just some more kind of child designs, really just focusing on the way that they are with teen and adult media is just really trying to capture those clicks. And, there's some things we can do. Like we can look at the resources about screen time. We can, turn off the Wi-Fi. There are all those different things that we can do. And there are good measures to support there. But in my personal opinion, I think the best measure is to have conversation and to really talk about this as a family and make some suggestions and really kind of see. The best way to find out what your kids are doing is to ask, right? And they may not tell you like the absolute thing, but then at 11 p.m. they're going to come in your room and then they're going to start telling you everything, and that's when we need to listen. All the parents of adolescents are laughing now because they know exactly what I'm talking about, right? All right, and this, the other thing too is using this as kind of a window into what your child is interested in and what they're thinking about. I mean, it really can serve as a bridge if you're talking about, oh, what did you see? Or, did you see this reel? Or my husband and my daughter, passing back reels about ridiculous people skydiving or something. There are room for commonality, in that co-viewing and joint engagement is a real bonus. So this is just kind of talks just a little bit more about emotional distancing during, making sure that we're actually talking to each other. And that goes both ways, from the parent and from the child, right? When we as parents are using our devices, we are also giving a lot of nonverbal communication that we are not available. And that's really important, especially for adolescents, because if anybody has an adolescent and knows that, right, their windows for when they really want to talk to you can be small. And that's developmentally appropriate. That separation from parents is totally appropriate. So making sure that we're available during those times. these are just a couple little recommendations, building insight into the motivation. Why are they using it? What is helpful for it? Why do they really like it? Asking these questions of your teenager is really great. Ask them when they're not when you're getting to an argument about how long they've been on the phone or how long they've been in their room, but when you guys are having just a conversation, say, I know you really love such and such, or can you teach me about it? Tell me about it. Tell me about TikTok. Tell me about Snapchat. They love to teach us, right? That's a really great thing. It makes them feel, because we're always telling them what to do, right? So it's really nice for adolescents to get into that mode where they can teach us. And we have so much to learn from them about so many different things. So I think that brings me almost to the end, just having your hands on the wheel, making sure we know what's going on, and making sure that, as parents, we're standing up for those things that are keeping our kids, when they are going to a bad place, making sure we know what that is and how to respond. So there is a couple of resources on here that I really like. The AAP has a family media plan, and you can go on to healthychildren.org. It's a great website put by the AAP, and there's actually a site there where you can go and make your own family media plan. And we do change it regularly because things change so quickly, right? The other thing that I really like is Common Sense Media. That, for me, was wonderful, especially when my daughter was younger. And I wanted to just check, just in general for media, like, is this movie appropriate for somebody her age? Is this, we all have, as parents, we all have guidelines for what we consider to be appropriate. And all of our definitions may not be the same. And this Common Sense Media really defines these kind of things in a more objective criteria so that you know what you're getting. So I would highly recommend those resources, and that's it. I think this is, if you guys want to, you can always scan this. This kind of takes you to our social media, to our Center of Excellence, and really just important resources to help support us as we support our children. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was great. Thank you. So we're going to just start our conversation, but one of the things that I wanted to touch on was the fact that I'm glad you touched on. It's not so much about social media, it's about life on the screen. And it's about digital wellness. How are we being healthy as we're using these tools? Because they're not going anywhere, and I'm glad you stated that. It's going to increase. Right now, it's Instagram, Snapchat. Next year, it could be a whole nother platform. So how do we evolve with it as it grows each year? But before we continue our conversation, I want to introduce our panelists, Miana Bryant, and we're not related. Because I know people ask. Thank you. Thank you. She is a distinguished mental health professional committed to youth mental health. She is hailing from Prince George County, Maryland, a proud graduate of Howard University School of Social Work. She is licensed in Maryland and Washington, D.C. She serves as a school-based therapist in Prince George County Public School System and a talk therapist in Northwest D.C., specializing in behavior and dialectical behavior therapy with an extensive expertise in supporting at-risk youth. She leads a team mentorship program in Washington, D.C., and she founded the Mental Elephant. I love that name. I really do. A global platform dedicated to improving access to mental health resources to young people. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, so we're going to start off because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I just want to jump right into it. And I think I saw you have some notes there too. So we're going to go. One of the first things is that social media is not going anywhere. And one of the facts that I looked up was that more than half the teens said it's difficult for them to give it up. This is just part of their daily lives. They cannot give this up. And they visit several platforms daily. So I spoke to some of you. You got me, was TikTok and Snapchat, but Instagram was on top one as well. And Discord. And if anyone doesn't know Discord, a lot of that was a platform for more gaming. And less popular is our Facebook, Twitter, and IG is on the borderline. It's not everywhere, depending on who you talk with. But the question is, how do we live with social media? And I want to start with you guys down, especially as a young person in high school, sophomore. How do you live with social media in your life and daily life?
I make sure that I set times whenever I'm not on it.
because if I'm on it all the time, then I could go on my phone really quickly, and then I'll look up and it's been like 2 hours, and I've done nothing but scroll, and I still have to have some forms of social media to be able to communicate with like friends and clubs, but I definitely try to find other ways to like spend my time where I'm not only on my phone.
That's good. What about you?
I actually have deleted my TikTok and Snapchat.
Okay.
So I deleted both of those back last year because I was just realizing they weren't helpful for me because I realized I spent a little too much time. I looked at my screen time on my phone settings and realized, oh, I spent 3 hours on Snapchat today and 8 hours on TikTok. Like, that is not normal. So I realized I did have to delete those. So that's what I try to do. I try to look at my usage throughout the day, and if it's way too much, if it's over 2 hours, then I would want to delete the app or set a time limit, because with Instagram I usually need to use that for UPN and clubs at school. So, but I like to delete the apps just to get rid of them.
Well, don't feel bad. They say the average teenager is on, or a person, really teenager, is 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And if we look at the average person, that's everyone, we have about 80 apps on our phone. And we go to about 8 or 9 of them per day. That's just an average person. So that's the screen life that we live right now.
Yes.
So what do you, as you see, graduated out of college, so you started a business. So how do you live with social media, especially that transition?
So I personally, because I would say kind of the in-between of I'm not super young anymore, but I am not a parent, so I'm still in that millennial, thankfully I'm still a millennial age. So for me personally, I definitely have to balance it because not only do I use social media for personal interactions, but a lot of my business stuff, a lot of my interactions with possible clients, other possible organizations that I want to work with come through Facebook, Twitter, come through Instagram. So social media does definitely have a cloud over it when it comes to interacting with teens and young children and just in general, but there is very much so a side of it that's able to help, able to be beneficial, able to kind of expand the ability for other people to have access to resources that if they weren't on TikTok, if they weren't on Instagram, they would not necessarily be able to see in their everyday life. So I definitely try to keep that in mind when I think about my outreach and being able to reach other people, but also, as both of the girls stated, definitely focusing on how much time is being used, setting a timer, setting a time limit, and engaging in the online world, but remembering that the online world is just that, the online world, and that there is a reality world, a real life world where the IRS and taxes exist that you have to be able to engage in and still be able to function.
That's good. And it's interesting you say that because the benefits, I'm glad you switched over to the benefits because 81% of teens feel connected to their friends by using social media. So if they didn't have it, especially during tough times like COVID, it was really helpful as far as being connected and sharing with friends and not feeling isolated. And it also exposes them to a bigger footprint as far as different perspectives and viewpoints and information. So it's an information tool as well. So it's not all negative. And that's something that you pointed out as well.
I think that that's really important. And any way that we can support our children to learn to be good communicators is incredibly important. I think that for us, in terms of social media, like I was telling you, in my own house, I have a teenager who never has her phone on her, who never responds to texts. That's just who she is. She's my husband. And and it's great. So I never had the problem with her, but I will tell you from her perspective as an adolescent, you know, her friends get angry with her because she didn't respond. She doesn't have Snapchat. There's been some kind of not stigma because she's got a really great friend group, but not because she's choosing it for any. At first, I have to say your decision's very mature for your age, and you should be incredibly that's very impressive to make those decisions that you've done.
Yes, it is.
But I think that we have to support our kids for communication and safe and effective communication. The other thing I will say, just as parents, we're talking about the positive aspects, but we do have to remember that the real world and the social media world are different. But for our kids, sometimes it's the same.
Yep.
So we have to understand that whereas I have to stand up for Gen X, right? The Gen Xers, the tough kids in the room, right? The kind of mentality about just get over it, that was really truly the platform that we were raised with, right? It's just not going to work. And particularly if you have a child who's got a mental health concern, or you have someone who's being bullied, when we were kids, if you were having I'm a girl, so it's middle school, and I have an argument with another friend group, and it's disastrous and horrible. And then I come home and I have 12 or 13 hours to be in the house with my family, to mentally repair, to kind of get myself up. Whereas children today don't have that. They can be literally, if they're in a bad situation, that bad situation can persist when they're home, when they're at school, everywhere. So, it's just important for us to remember to take a step back, always try to put ourselves in their position, and remember that we're using that for communication, and that can be great and that can be bad. So teaching them the good rules about how to communicate effectively.
And I think you bring up a good point, because they are born into this. A lot of us, we were not born into social media. We didn't born into cell phones. I remember a time where there wasn't a cell phone, or very few people had one, and they were huge. So we're living in the Jetson age. If you guys know what the Jetsons are, I'm just saying we have that now. We are looking on screens and we're talking to people. Cars are driving itself. It's all the things that we saw as children. They are now living. So we have to think about that and put that in perspective as we are telling them, like you said, they can't get over it. They're living it. And it's interesting you bring that up, because I want to speak more about the various systems in our community, whether it's individuals, schools, organizations, as you two young ladies are part of your business, how they can support healthy social media usage. And I want to bring up one case. It was a 15-year-old in Chicago who was being bullied, cyberbullied, and it was texting and it was on social media. And he went to a principal to tell him that, I need some help with this. The principal brushed it off, maybe not thinking it was a big deal. And a month later, the young man, he committed suicide. Now, what was interesting about that story, the parents were never notified, because maybe they didn't think it was a big deal. They were not notified that their child went first to a support system, which was the school. But the school dropped the ball because somebody may not understand social media, may not think it's that important, or didn't realize the impact. So that's the other part. So there's also another thing that a lot of teens, majority of them, think that if you do any kind of harassment or bullying on social media, a lot of them think that you should be permanently banned and there should be charges. So that's interesting to think that, even though they're using it a lot, they do they feel that you should be held accountable when something goes the wrong way and for your actions. And I want to speak to you guys about that, because that's more in your age range, especially as a sophomore in high school. Do you hear about bullying? Do you feel that there are support systems around if yourself or someone is experiencing that?
Yeah, I definitely have seen. We recently just had a incident in high school yesterday, where there was a fight in one of a physical fight in the building, because that started online and because of a TikTok thing. And so I don't think oftentimes that schools realize that even though it's something that could start online, it can sometimes carry on into actual physical violence, or in a school building or just in person. And it's something that's very serious that I don't think gets enough attention all the time. And there is you could go to your counselors, but sometimes it's hard to get appointments with them, or it's really for you're really told it's if you need to change your schedule, or if you need to talk, but not if you're having being bullied, or if there's an issue, that you can come and talk to us, and we can help you guys both come in and talk in a safer environment.
Gotcha. What do you see, Michelle?
So I've actually like read about a lot about this, but with social media, it's harder because you're not physically in school. So technically, if someone is harassing you online, it's harder for the school to do anything about it because you're not in the school building or on school property. But I've seen a lot of things with people agreeing that if someone has been harassing you online and you physically do something to yourself because of it, that person should be charged with a felony. And I completely agree personally because just because it's online harassment, they're not directly saying it to your face. It's still harassment. It's still affecting you mentally. You're being threatened, so it's hard to understand though, because it's like, I think my parents have told me, they say people are braver online than they are in person, and I think that's 100% true. But that does not give them the right to say things to someone in a threatening or abusive way. So.
And I think people take it differently, especially when it comes to bullying, because, Gen X and older, we had it in person, face to face. So, it was in the schoolyard or after school or notes and things of that nature. So it wasn't online. You had time to go and, like you said, go home and decompress. But if you can't decompress, if you have the phone on you all the time, so that's hard. I just wanted to ask you about, in your business, do you see a lot of clients or people that you talk to, well, you deal with youth in school, is social media the driving force for them coming to see you for mental health challenges?
I will say, so I recently transitioned into the elementary school age, but I am coming out of middle school age. I feel like I'm a little bit too young to work with high school age right now. No offense. But I will say, coming out of the middle school age, and that middle school age is that very tough time period of, puberty hitting for kids at that point. That's kind of when you really are coming into yourself. You get out of that world of being a little kid and you start to get more responsibility. So I will say around the middle school age, a lot of the issues that I definitely had to mediate were issues online. A lot of things of people posting inappropriate pictures of others, people commenting really negative things on people, and a lot of it is bullying, 100%, but I will say that a good portion of it is not necessarily one child bullying another, but more so one group is saying some things about another group, and then one person from that group feels the need to step up. So it ends up being a really gray area sometimes of who is actually being the bully, who's not being the bully, and that's where I feel the school ends up somewhat losing a bit of its traction, because it's hard to, punish and say, well, this one child should get in trouble when, okay, but what about what this child said to her? And what about what this child posted to her? So social media as a whole is a very gray area to a certain extent, in my opinion, especially once it comes to cyberbullying and harassment, just because a lot of times you don't see the full picture. A lot of times kids just bring, oh, well, look what so-and-so said to me on social media, and they don't show you the 50 messages that they sent to them and the pictures that they posted. So it's definitely a very gray area depending on the age.
Depending on the age.
I just wanted to add one thing about that, because I think that brings up a really great point. First of all, working with middle school children, my hat's off to you. That is a very difficult time. Just the one thing I wanted to kind of point out is you're talking about pubertal development and things like that. For girls tend to go through puberty earlier than boys do. So the studies actually showed for the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, that showed that the highest kind of influence of social media on girls was between 11 and 13. And for boys, it was 12 to 14, right? Which kind of makes sense given the fact of when when you start changing from a child into an adult. So for me, when you think about, a lot of parents will ask me, what age should I start? Is it okay to give my child social media, all that? You have to remember social media is very broad. Like Pinterest is social media, right? Like I thought my daughter was getting to learn how to crochet, and So, but just wanted to kind of bring those up. Those age times tend to be the ones that tend to have the big effect. And so I said they're all in middle school. So, whew, that's a hard time.
So one of the things about in school, especially, we could say, like you said, you mentioned something about it's hard for schools to jump in because it can be happening off school. But what about the whole movement of no phones in school, in classrooms? That seems to be growing. Quite a few states are, I think Ohio is one, and a few others that are about to start passing no phones in the school at all. So not saying it could stop because you can go home and bully and get online, but we all know a lot of it starts while they're in the classroom. You spend most of your time in school. So what are your thoughts on the school's no smart, basically phone-free zones? Do you think that would help?
So that's tricky because Montgomery County actually tried to talk to us multiple times in these past, since after COVID, but they've tried to talk to us about not having phones in the classroom at all, and we've had homeroom discussions, we've had multiple different things, and nothing has ever worked. It's strange because a teacher can go against that. It's not it's very, and also kids are very much oh, it's my property, it's my parents bought it or I bought it, you can't take it away from me. So it's really hard because Poolsville tried to do that with us, and there's posters in multiple classrooms saying no cell phone zone, but during the class day there are cell phone usage. So I don't think it would be, I think it's really hard to tell a kid that you can't use your cell phone throughout the school day because we are always on it. It's how we contact our family, or it's because you can never distinguish, is this kid playing games? Are they on Instagram or are they contacting their mom? So it's really, I've never seen any benefits out of it personally.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a school that recently had a couple of them, and one of the benefits they found out was in the lunchroom or the break time that there was actually a conversation, and there was less, there was a lot more engagement, and there was less, I would say, friction going on because of, like you said, things that people would say to each other or post something really negative. So that's interesting to hear. But of course, they didn't like it. But they fell in line with it after a while. So I think it depends because we're looking at something very open and global. But I think locally, we have to look at will it work? Like you said, here in Poolsville, didn't work.
Yeah, and it's also harder because we don't have a cafeteria as well.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have a cafeteria or any lunch place, so everyone can go off campus if they would like to.
Oh, well, then that's very different.
So it's very different for us. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
So what do
under
you feel?
construction. Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So what do you say, Eli? You're in high school right now, and so when you're, you go home. But let's say I'm sure there's some activities where everyone gets together in an auditorium, anything like that. Is everyone paying attention or just on their phones, texting each other back and forth?
We also don't have an auditorium currently.
Okay, I'm batting, boy.
Yeah, but we used to have assemblies for gun violence or for just a community building thing. And people were either whispering to their friends or just kind of on their phones. And with what you brought up with lunchtime, that's the times whenever the school says, oh, that's your time to be on your phone. That's whenever they say that you can be on your phone. Kids are on their phone regardless if it's lunchtime or not. But I think it's I feel like kids are just going to be on their phone regardless, and if they're not on their phone, they're just going to be talking to their friends, so they're going to not be paying attention regardless. But I definitely think it could have a effect on the amount of distraction, I guess, that kids have.
How they would focus on the paying attention. That definitely, I guess, decreases if they're on their phone. Definitely. So, I was going to jump into you about that as far as your studies. What do you see with that, especially with this is what you guys are, like you said, the grant, and really diving deep into the research that we don't have. What are you seeing in terms of that attention focusing?
So I think one of the things is just for the students at the table may not be happy. I think Montgomery County is going to talk about that again as a county. So that is going to be a legislative issue and may actually find its way up to the State House at some point. Talking about different representation. Personally, from the AAP, I think that we should think very seriously about that, especially in elementary schools and middle schools. I don't know any elementary school student that needs to have a phone in the middle of the school day. And this actually kind of is one of my patients when he went to school in Carroll County. He was in 3rd grade, and he was telling me that everybody was on their phone at lunchtime in the 3rd grade. From a child development perspective, I would defer to my colleagues here who have a more social work and psychological background, but that is not consistent with the kind of developmental skills that 3rd graders need to be working on. So I think sadly for you guys, there may be more in the works, but hopefully what this can do is bring up a discussion. Right? Once again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, this needs to be a discussion. We need to listen to young people. I did tell them that I thought that high school was going to be hard because parents need to know where their kids are, right? That is that time where they're getting that independence. But there's a great book that talks about that, about when your adolescents are growing up. It's kind of like swimming in a swimming pool. Your job is to stand there on the side. So they swim out to the middle, and then when they realize they're in over their head, they swim back to the side of the pool. And that's your job, is to be standing at the side of the pool, right? So I think it's important for them to be able to contact you as a teenager. But I definitely think that's going to be in the works. So, but it definitely does cut down on social interactions. I mean, across the board, right? Home, school, softball, baseball, football, on the bus, all those things. So I definitely agree that there needs to be some limitations in terms, especially depending on the developmental age, and we need to be providing developmentally appropriate times for phone use.
Did you want to say something on that?
So to piggyback off of what you said, I do 100% when it comes to the developmental space, I do 100% agree that children should not necessarily have their phone. My take, or I guess my little bone into the fight, would definitely be more so the thought of safety. Because unfortunately, with the times that we are in, with the influx of school shootings, with the influx of just the danger that is coming very close to our schools, I definitely would more so caution on the side of not necessarily kids just easily having access, but kids being able to get in touch with their parents, kids being able to get in touch with their family. Because in addition to major issues that may happen in the school, I know there are some kids who may have sickle cell anemia, there are some kids who may be diabetic, there are some kids who may have their own personal situations that when something happens, they need to be able to reach out to mom and dad. And sometimes it's not as easy to say, okay, we'll go to your teacher, because if you have a teacher with 30, 40 kids in a classroom, they're not going to be able to stop what they're doing for 29 of them just to go call mom for that specific one. So I do 100% think that phones should not be in the classroom. But I personally am very much so an advocate. I don't know if you all see them, but in a lot of high schools now, they have like a little pouch that kids go in and have to put their phone into, and then the pouch kind of like protects it and locks it. I do think that that is a pretty good alternative, because it allows the student to still have their phone and not just have direct access to it. But if, say, they have diabetes or something like that and their blood sugar drops or something goes off, they easily can, okay, I need my phone for an emergency so I can contact my mom.
And they're doing that now. I mean, I went to a concert recently, and they took your phone, they put it in that pouch, and when you left, you walk out, and they have like a magnetic thing, and you put it in, it opens it up. So there are mechanisms that we can use, and that we are using, but we just haven't put it in place in schools, which is interesting. And it's interesting when you talk about the age limit on phones, but what about the age limit on social media? Because right now, Florida is thinking about putting age limit where you would have to be 16 and over to have a social media account. And if you're under 16, it has to be with parental permission. So what do you guys feel about that, as far as social media having an age limit on that? Not the phones, but the actual usage of a Facebook, Twitter, any other account under 16.
I would say that I personally support that, not necessarily in the harassment space. And this might sound very crass. I think if a child wants to harass another student, they're going to, even if it's not necessarily on social media. When they get into the school building, if a child has that type of anger or issue toward another student, it can come out any type of way. But I will say when it comes to that it definitely depends. I more so would focus on not necessarily them being able to interact with each other, but children being caught up in the images that adults post and the images that have been posted out. I know for me and in my community, kids nowadays do not look like kids 20 years ago. They have long hair. They have very expensive shoes. They're trying to go after this very specific image of what a girl or what a boy should look like. And they're 13, 14, 15. They also are not paying for their own stuff. So they're going to their parents and asking their parents, hey, mom, can you buy me these $300 shoes because so-and-so on Instagram has them and I want to look cool at school. It ends up kind of becoming the thing of trying to be what you see. So I heavily support the parental guidance up until the age of 16, just because, as you stated, that puberty age and that age of 11 to 13 or 12 to 15, you are very impressionable. You are very easily, oh, I want to look like this. I need to look like that in order to get this. So I definitely think lessening the ability to kind of see what I would say is like the adult aspects of social media can definitely help in just preventing kids even getting into that body image issue, even getting into that hair issue, or even getting into honestly starting to see like, man, do my parents not really have money because, you know, kids on here looking like this, or what is going on in my house if my parents look like this? You see what I mean? So it's more so just not even focusing on them having access to each other, but focusing on the world that now has access to them. And being able to definitely separate, or at least be a parent to get in between before they reach that age of, you don't need to see and know all of this about the world yet because you don't necessarily understand it in the context that needs to be understood.
Yeah, and it goes into with what your children have access to that may not be in line with what you're teaching at home.
Yep.
And then what you would need to explain, and will they come to you to get the explanation, as opposed to, and there's a number of topics we can run off for that, and I think that's what's prompt this kind of band that they wanted to have under 16. One was the bullying and the increase in suicide, but there also was the information that was put out there that was causing the anxiety, causing young people to just feel like they didn't have anything, or they always had a fear of being in the know. How do you guys feel? Do you think that would work? I mean, at 16, a ban on a particular age, they're saying 16 and under would need to have a parental permission, or just not be on it at all until you're 16.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people here are on TikTok, but there are these recent trends that are like really like basically made up beauty standards, like having legging legs and having high visual weight versus low visual weight. Like, it's just this random stuff that makes you, that's just another standard that you have to live up to. And there's like these, and there's like, you see like 8-year-olds in Sephora getting like anti-aging stuff whenever they're like 8, and it's they're going straight for these like anti-aging, anti-wrinkle, anti-everything, and it's like, that's not something that 8-year-olds should be doing. Like, whenever I was 8, I was just playing outside still with my like play dress up stuff, and I think it's not healthy for these kids to be like immediately going, and the first thing that they're experiencing on social media is, oh, I need to look like that. If I don't look like that, then I don't look right.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump into you. The reason why you see a lot of this is because it's monetized. These are becoming influencers. These are people that are getting money because of the hits. So now, it used to be more of adults, young people. Now you have parents that are using their children as a way to get on social media. We've seen things where it's been more positive, you know, obviously playing dolls or anything like that's age appropriate. But now we see things that are now, when you see someone's in Sephora at 8 years old, that's because their mother brought them there. So, or auntie brought them there. So we have to look at the parents' behavior in this as well. And because you can make money off of the hits, off of the followers, this has now become a big thing where you need very little to no talent to make six figures in a year just by having a social media account. So that changes the dynamics of what people would use it for or limitations they would think about. Because if you did this back in the day on a magazine, or people would have called you out, they'd be like, they're not putting an 8-year-old on a magazine with makeup and anti-wrinkle. But now that it's online and you have people that support it, and even just you clicking on it and looking at it, you've also given them support and money as well, even though you don't agree with it. So, and it not, it's just, you're like, wait a minute, did you see this 8-year-old? So if you pass it to you, you pass it to me, and we have just now made more money in their pocket, even though we don't agree with it. So what do you feel about the ban, especially as you're now past that age, so you'd be fine. But as you were growing up, do you see there would have been a benefit of that?
Yeah, so my parents love them now for it. Did not allow me on social media till I was in high school because it was, they saw the effects with my 2 older brothers. They're in the audience right now. Hey, guys. So they saw the effects with my 2 older brothers, and they saw that there was harassment, there was just really weird stuff happening on social media, and they did not want their teenage daughter being on it, because especially the difference between treatment on social media between boys and girls is very different. I feel like girls are more sexualized on social media than boys are, even if they are like children. 10 years old can even be sexualized. So yeah, so I totally agree with it. I think I was lucky enough to experience like my entire childhood, my entire middle school self, because I did not get a phone until later. So I was mad at them then, but I am not mad at them
Brothers
now.
were the tests for you.
Yes,
So by the time they got to you,
They're like,
they had it listed.
Yes, I was mad at them then. I was like, guys, why can't I have social media? But I'm very grateful to them now. So yeah, I totally 100% agree that it should be banned, because it doesn't seem helpful for kids to be looking at influencers and they're not even going through puberty yet, and they're
No, sure, no.
I would like to point out, this might be the therapist and me jumping out, but I would like to point out that I think your parents holding you from getting on social media until such an older age is part of why you were able to delete TikTok and Snapchat, because you already were like, well, I know how to function and live life without it, versus kids who grow up and the first thing that they get is a tablet put in front of their face. They don't necessarily have the idea or the grand concept of life without a screen in front of you. So good job, Mom and Dad.
Yes. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, our brain doesn't stop forming and changing until we're 25. So let's all take a moment of that. Your brain finishes growing when you're 25.
Okay.
I talk to my patients about this all the time when it comes to social media, when it comes to marijuana, when it comes to, all different kinds of substances. So it is important for each parent to be able to, have a conversation with their child about it. So I definitely think that, the majority of parents in my house, I'm with your parents. My daughter didn't get a phone until she was 13. She thought I was the most evil person in the world, and she didn't get social media until high school. And you're exactly right. This is all about, once again, this is all about development. This is where your brain is and what you are ready for. And I also want to just make a point about what you guys were saying about you were talking about women, girls and boys being different. That doesn't change. Men and women still very different as adults when we talk about media presentation, right? And how they're referred to and how, the images are painted. But it is really, once again, developmentally, right? We are not able at certain ages in our life to be able to say, there are 14 filters on this picture of this girl. This is biologically impossible, right? As a doctor, I look at that, I'm like, that doesn't actually exist in the human spectrum, right? So it is important that we're just making sure that we're, approaching and making good decisions with our children that are developmentally appropriate for them. And I'm going to go home and tell my daughter how you thanked your parents in front of everybody.
She owes you a thank
Yeah, Yeah, and it's not, I mean, that's the whole thing is it's not easy. Those are not easy decisions for anybody. They're not easy decisions. They're not easy conversations for the adolescent, and they're not easy conversations for the parents either.
And I think when you're talking about, I just want to segue into this other thing as a question we have, and anybody can jump in, but I'm going to get to you first, Dr. Burke, about your thoughts on social media and children and obesity. Because we're just talking about body image, and you guys brought it up with as far as it being different for girls and boys, which is true. They say more young ladies are on TikTok than young men. They're on Snapchat chat more often. But they also have, there's a study, and I have all this paper here, that says that young ladies feel the pressure more on social media, and it also holds them back from sharing or maybe just getting off it as well, because they feel the pressure of either looking a certain way. Comments affect them really differently than young men. And like you said, even without even being sexualized, just someone saying something like, about weight, about what they wore, their hair, anything, or just attaining this unrealistic standards of beauty. So, but how do you feel that impact on social media on obesity and the lack of playing outside, which we already talked about, but the obesity is a big thing, because body image is a big
Huge,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we always talk about is, FOMO, right? It's all the fear of missing out, right? So talking about getting off of these apps, whether it's for obesity or if it's the other extreme with an eating disorder, it's, once again, I know I keep saying this, but it's that developmentally appropriate time, right? Because they don't understand that. I can literally, as an example, we were shopping for something and something was 3 weeks away, and my daughter was like, well, I can't buy it yet. It's too soon because it might go out of style. Like, it's 3 weeks. Like, you know what I'm saying? But for us as parents, we had to wait for a month for the next magazine to come, right? Before you went and sat down and you got your Teen or your Vogue or whatever it was as a fashion magazine. Now you have to wait 10 seconds before someone else is going to come up with us. So I definitely think there are links in terms of, obviously, with body image. Obesity in general, we want to think about it too. I just want to, just as a little aside, that we're really thinking about obesity differently now, right? It is about intake of healthy foods and amount of exercise, but there's also genetic components, there's environmental components, there's socioeconomic components, there's lots of components to obesity. So I certainly don't think that we can put all that, on social media. Making sure that's actually, in terms of you're concerned about your kids with physical activity, especially for younger kids, the way that I like to address it with my patients is they just can earn it, right? So if you want to spend 30 minutes gaming, or you want to spend 30 minutes, on social media, if it's a younger child, and you feel like they've been, being more sedentary, and this does tend to affect young women more, because especially in specific communities, in my community where I practice, after a certain age, usually around middle school, particularly for girls, they're either playing 4 sports a year, or they're ones that just want to stay in. They want to read. They want to watch TV. They're not really getting that exercise. So just having them earn it. Say, you want to do 30 minutes of social media? I need you to do something else for 30 minutes. Go outside or walk, whatever, depending on your environment. There's just, come up with something else that they can get moving. So I think that's like a little bit of a complicated question, because there's a lot of issues that, can relate to obesity. But I think in general, just making sure, if you're going to do that, if you feel like your child's being too sedentary with that, just kind of have an exchange for 30 minutes of something else.
So it goes back to us pretty much being in our households and parents taking control and being involved and understanding these platforms. I think you have to take the time to understand the platforms. I know it's a lot, but if you have them on it and you don't understand, then it's hard to say what they can or can't not do, and what they're doing and what they're doing wrong. So like one of the things is that we're talking about now a TikTok ban that may happen. And that's across the country, because one of the things with the algorithms that are different here, what you would see, like when you're scrolling, what they see overseas is completely different. What they're seeing here is stuff that's usually really harmful, or something that may not be age appropriate. But if in other countries, they, primarily in China, as everyone's saying, they will see more stuff that's educational. They'll see things that fits their age range, whoever has that. So it's interesting that technology is out there, and while it's not widely used, not just on TikTok, but across all platforms, because that could pretty much I think, change this conversation in a different direction. But do you think, how do you think that impact will be on TikTok if that is a ban? Because especially with teens, that is a big demographic that is using it. That is the number one platform for them. YouTube is one, which surprised me. TikTok is the second.
Yeah. So I think teens will just go on to another site, honestly. I don't think they will stop. Their social media intake will go down. I think they'll just move on to another platform because, again, Instagram, there's now Reels, which is the same as TikTok, and then YouTube Shorts. So it's really hard to get away from like TikTok and those little short videos where you can just scroll. So I think really teens will just move on to another site.
Just move on to another site. Yep. I understand. Do you feel the same way too?
Don't move. I feel like this is also going to like create, if TikTok gets banned, there's going to be another app soon that's created that's going to basically be TikTok, but not, called TikTok. Because we see how many people are on it that someone's immediately gonna be like, oh, now I need to make that. And so then they're either going to move to a different place or they're going to go to that new place to use it.
That makes sense. So then I want to ask you, going back into what would you suggest parents do when they're posting pictures of their children and teens online? Because right now we talked about what teens are posting, but what about parents posting? What is appropriate? Like we talked about the young lady, the 8-year-old in Sephora, well, she didn't buy that phone and she didn't get to Sephora on her own. So what is it? So let's talk about the adults, the behavior, what they're posting. What can they do different that can help this situation with mental health and wellness in terms of young people on social media platforms? I'll start with you, since I know you're dealing with in the school and that you have them for a very long time. And how could you see that parents can help? Because I notice a lot of times when conflicts happen, parents jump in. Mm-hmm. And they jump in not just in person, but also online. Mm-hmm. And that escalates the situation as well.
I definitely think a big thing for parents to remember is, yes, there is a huge developmental gap. There is a huge, a lot of gaps when it comes to a parent and a child. But definitely remembering that parents are still human. Parents are still just as influenced as children can be when it comes to social media. Parenting as a whole, I would definitely say, has kind of not necessarily shifted, but parenting as a whole, in my opinion, has been impacted by social media. Just even by the start of gentle parenting, which my parents did not do, but gentle parenting, and that whole wave of, trying to talk to your kids and a different thing. But I definitely think a big portion of it is for parents to realize that, yes, your children can be overwhelmed and heavily influenced by social media, but so can you. Mm-hmm. And it's important to realize that you also have to step away from the social media world. A big thing that I try to teach my kids and also adult patients is to look at social media as a commercial. So we know when we see a Wendy's commercial, the burger on the Wendy's commercial looks amazing. But when you actually get to Wendy's, it's not what was on the commercial at all. So it's important to remember that social media is people showing the absolute best of themselves, the absolute best of their lives. You're not going to post, the worst time that you're having in your life. You're not going to go and post that on Facebook for all your friends and family to see. So it's important for kids and parents to understand that, yes, social media is a very large encompassing space, but it is all commercials. It is all people showing 5% of a 100% life, and you can't latch onto that 5% and think, hey, I want to be like that, and you don't know the 95% of what people are really dealing with and going through. So when it comes to that, I definitely say for parents to, yes, to focus on their children, but make sure that they are not solely saying, you're influenced, you need to do this, you need to that, but definitely taking a step back and saying, okay, I want to make sure that I'm parenting my child the way that I want to parent my child, not parenting my child the way that TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and all these other apps are saying you should parent and talk to your child. Or if your child is arguing on Instagram, you should get on and also argue with them, because not only does it put your child in a dangerous space, it also begins to mess up their ideology of you as a parent. Because if I'm arguing with a kid, why are you arguing with a kid? You see what I'm saying? Because now it's kind of like, you end up starting to mess up that connection of respect, that connection of authority, that connection of, okay, this is my parent, because once a parent steps down to, you know, a child or a teen's level, that everything becomes very different. So definitely my suggestion would be for parents to monitor their kids, but also monitor themselves.
Definitely. And it's interesting you say that, because one of the things with social media is a mobile magazine. That's basically what you think about it. It's all advertisement on personal lives and advertisement with companies that are on there as well. So it's not real. So that's a really good analogy that you give them. And I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah,
And I wanted to ask you as a parent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great, that's just a great point. I mean, one of the things about social media is that as a parent, right, we have to be an example, right? That's even if you don't want to be, as a parent, you are an example every single day. And I tell my daughter, you know, it's really important for us to say, like, when we are going to make mistakes, because parents are human. And when you make a mistake, admit it to your child, tell them you made a mistake, and how are you going to fix that? And what are you going to do so that doesn't happen next time? So I have 2 quick points about that. First is, your child is your child, but especially as they get to be older and they have their own opinions and their own personality, don't post anything about your kid without their permission, right? They are their own person. You know, my husband and my daughter go about this all the time, because my daughter is very, very, very aggressive about which pictures she will allow to be on Instagram, right? I understand. I get it. My husband is not. And you know, she's daddy's little girl. He thinks she looks great all the time, right? So, you know, be respectful of the fact that they deserve their own privacy and they deserve to make their own decisions. So I think when they can consent, then you need to ask. By the time they get old enough to consent, you need to ask. The second thing is impulse control. You were talking about parents getting involved into disagreements and things like that. Social media is one of the things, and I mean, I think just in general in society, we talk about this, is things happen very quickly. You know, we were talking earlier about inappropriate pictures and posting inappropriate pictures. Now I'm going to totally age my Gen X self again. If you were going to take an inappropriate or a picture that probably wasn't a good idea, you would take the picture, then you had to wait till all the film was taken up on that camera. Then you had to go to the little place in the middle of the parking lot at mine, it was by the market basket, by the grocery store, and then you had to give it to the person, and then it went away for 3 days, and then it came back and you had your picture, right? How much time did that get you to decide, maybe I shouldn't give that picture to my friend? I just gave you 5 days to figure out if you want to send an inappropriate picture to your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your other friend. They don't have 5 seconds, right? That's the thing that we as adults, that's something that we develop, right? Not all adults develop it, but most of us get to the point that we have that impulse control and that ability to stop and think about it just for a second and think about it. And that's our job as parents, right? Developmentally, they're not there yet. And they haven't lived the life that we had and understand. I mean, you know, as an adult, we see you do something and we're like, you don't understand that the consequences of dominoes that this is going to put into place. But that's our job as their parents. So impulse control and consent. Those are my 2 parent comments that I would put on that.
No, I think that's great. What about you guys? Well, you said your parents already pretty much, are they on social media?
They are on social media.
They're on
yes,
social, yes.
they are.
Well, if you're on, I'm sure they're on too.
Facebook, yep.
That's rule 1. You should be on. If your children are on social media, you should be on social media. They should not be on social media alone. They really shouldn't be. And what about your parents? Are they on social media? Yes, they are.
One of the things that I always think, definitely ask, especially a teenager, because it's like, that's something that their friends could see. And maybe you think that, like, as a parent, you're like, oh my gosh, my kid looks great all the time, look how adorable they are. But they see it and they're like, oh, my eyes are closed, or oh, I have food out in my mouth. And they don't want that to be online. And it's definitely like a respect of being like, I don't want you to feel upset by what I am putting online. So while it might make you happy, it might make your kid feel upset and be like, why would you do that?
And it's interesting you say that because I wonder now, as we have these 8-year-old influencers wearing makeup, what do they say to their parents when they turn 15, 16, 21, 25 and look back on it? And the impact, we don't know it yet. We'll see. We'll look at your research as it comes in there. But that's going to be something to talk about because we are in an anxious generation. There's a book called The Anxious Generation, and it talks about, getting off the phone, getting off the screen, and the impact that we have. But I think one of the things that's bigger is our control. How do we control it? Because at the end of the day, like you said, you have to control your household, not from social media, but from you, and being a present parent. I think a lot of times we had with TV and technology, we've moved away from, I can plop them in front of the screen because I need some downtime, which is fine. But now we have a screen that goes beyond the channels being turned. And they can go into some worlds and places that you have no control over. And we talked a lot about social media, but we can also talk about gaming. Gaming apps are a big one. That is also a backdoor to a lot of older people preying on young people getting in there. Those private rooms, separate conversations, stuff that you won't see in a feed because it's in a gaming platform behind a closed wall. So we talk about social media. Can we speak about the gaming and the gaming apps? How does that play a part in this, in wellness, mental health, and just development of young people in general? Because not too many parents, are on gaming platforms, but youth are.
So I'm not on like the crazy gaming apps that are
What are the crazy gaming apps?
I don't know. What are the crazy
There's
ones?
like VR, which is something my younger brother is on all the time, where he's literally like, he puts on goggles and he is just he can turn and he's like in this world.
Those are crazy.
He's talking
yeah.
to anyone.
Yeah.
He could be talking to literally anyone, and that's something my parents talk to him a lot about, but he sees no issue with it because that's just what
I put these VR on, I'm on this game, and I could be talking to someone in a whole nother country.
Yep. Yes.
And they could, and we don't know what they look like because everybody has an avatar and can look whatever it is. And you're talking and having this conversation, and there's no really record of it or anything because you're just live.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to put this out there because not everybody knows what VR is and what it looks like, and we see the commercials with the goggles and you see the old men flying. That's very cute and very safe, but there's another component of it of actually talking to people that your parents don't know who you're talking to. They could say who they are and they're not. There's a lot. That's a really big backdoor open for a lot of things. So continue. I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's literally a virtual reality that you're completely engulfed in, and it's like he is talking to anyone, and he doesn't even realize how loud he gets, or just he loses his surroundings. And he could be it's like my parents could say, you can't be talking to random people because that's not safe, and he'll be like, I know, but then he just he forgets it whenever he just goes on, because to him he's just talking to the same people who like playing the games, and he's just playing the games, but they could be like talking to them, the same people, and he's like, oh, I was playing with these people last week. And then they keep talking, and they keep talking to him, and he get more information. And well, to them it's like, oh, I'm just playing a fun game. It's really not a game, and it can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah. I've never played the crazy games like that. I grew up with like Minecraft and Roblox. So I think Minecraft is where you like build things out of like cubes. It's not that dangerous, but Roblox is like the big one. So it's like this overall site where there are millions of games that you can play that people make, and it is crazy because the age range on that website is from like 5 to like 80. So you really never know, and the games can go from like a dating game to like role play to shooting to any of these things. So it's really crazy because I remember I would be on the game and I would be playing this like role play game of me being like a princess, and I would be with my cousins on the game, and there would be these other people talking to us, and they would say, oh, they're 13, but you would never really know. And it's really scary because you would never really know. And like people would ask you like, oh my God, like we have the same interests, we're the same age, like let's meet up. And like that's where it's like scary. And I would watch way too many documentaries to know like, no, stop it, like I need to get off. So I would be good, but like I worried about like my cousins ever doing that. So yeah, it's really terrifying because those gaming websites, also Fortnite is a big one where adults will prey on children.
They will.
Yep.
And what people don't realize is with the gaming, with these rooms, is that it's not the traditional games where of Atari and all the stuff we play, Donkey Kong and all that. I'm aging myself. You put in, you play it, and you may play with someone next to you. You're playing with people all over the world, but a lot of the games that I realize, it's not necessarily playing games. It just seems to be this interaction going on, more dialogue, conversation. So I don't even know. Sometimes I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, you're supposed to be playing a game, but I just see someone walking around. Now you look like this avatar and you're having these interesting conversations, and then it could lead to, well, meet me over here, and then they always have these little back rooms you can go into and then have private conversations, and that's where it gets dangerous. And then the other part of it is that, again, you can start spilling out information that you normally wouldn't do to someone in the street. Because you could say, well, yeah, I live over here in Poolsville, and oh, yeah, I'm going to be at the town hall today at 6 o'clock. You don't know who you're talking to. And they would meet you there, and that's happened to quite a few young people, and that's where a lot of trafficking and, unfortunately, kidnapping has happened. It's not necessarily just grabbing someone on the street, it's online. So the online presence of your family, like they're saying, being careful what you spill out, because we all get loose in the mouth. You just get comfortable. Oh, yeah, I go to this high school. Really? Well, what's your name? Oh, really? And you can drive down and get that information. And again, people have to also be careful on social media when you have your location access, dropping where you are. Oh, I'm here. I'm here. And they tell people when you go on vacation, you shouldn't put up your pictures and stuff until you usually get back because you leave your home open. So that's for adults, but for children, you don't need to put that you're in the mall at this certain time, especially for people you don't know. But going back to gaming, that's something that we're talking about social media, but it'll be interesting to see the research on that. And I don't think we've even touched that yet, because if social media has moved this fast, gaming has at warp speed. Because there's, like you said, there's a game within a game, within the game, and a game, and a game.
Yep.
And like the fact that you said role play. Some parents, when you said role play, I'm like, role play? Who's playing role play on social media, on a game? But you don't think about that. And it goes from dating to shooting to whatever. But as a parent, I can't monitor that unless I'm playing the game with you. So now I can't even see a feed. So how do you feel with that as a parent, hearing that in gaming?
So, I think gaming is very unique in that, once again, there's definitely probably there's some positive aspects, right? Because there is socialization. There are certainly kind of areas where I have patients who may be more comfortable actually having all their social interactions that would be in that kind of a situation, making friends. There's, once again, pluses and minuses, but you have to make sure that you're being safe. And that's why we really, it's a kind of the same thing that, don't talk to strangers and all those things that we heard growing up. We need to make sure that our kids have good information about that they have rules to follow. And those are the kind of rules that you want to be able to enforce, right, to keep them safe. I was hearing what your brother said. I think that's hilarious. I tell in my house, I say, if I had $1 for every time I heard the words "I know," right? I know, Mom. I know. It's just important that we keep reiterating that, because they don't know, right? They're not in that situation, and so much again is because they believe that why would someone do that? I mean, I think most reasonable people would say that. Why would someone do that? But it happens, and kids are easy prey.
And did you have anything to say about gaming? Do you use that in your therapy sessions, or see that with young people game?
I will say, when it comes to gaming, so my two takes on it, when it comes to gaming, number one is, yes, there are children that play games. There's also a whole nother world on top of gaming where people are themselves playing a game and then they're streaming onto a whole nother platform. And I mean, there are people that literally stream for 24 hours straight, where your kid can literally log onto YouTube and watch somebody sitting in a chair for 24 hours, and then they can comment on the bottom, and then you say a comment, and somebody, or say your kid is like, oh, hi from Maryland. Well, now somebody else is like, oh, I'm also in Maryland. We should meet over here. So it can kind of open up to different things. The biggest thing that I would definitely try to push is back to the developmental era. Reality in itself is one world that kids, and when I speak of kids, I mean anybody under the age of 20. Reality in itself is one world. Social media in itself is one world. Gaming in itself is one world. As a child, you're not able to comprehend and balance 3 different worlds and separate 3 different worlds. So that's where you get into kids who play shooting games all the time, but then they're upset at school, so they think that shooting can go into the school. That's where kids get in trouble at school, and they're mad at one person, so they think, well, I could take it over to the social media world and bother them on social media, because they think it's 3 different worlds, and not realizing, because their brain cannot genuinely grasp the actual concept and context, that it all is still one thing, it's all linked together, and it all can be dangerous. So I would definitely suggest, when it comes to parents, when it comes to gaming and social media in general, if you yourself cannot understand it, don't let your kid get on it. If you yourself are not able to sit and understand, okay, Twitter is this, and then there's DMs, and then there's mentioning. You see what I'm saying? Don't let your kid get on it, because what you don't want is for your kid to be on Discord, be on Twitch, be in VR, and they're genuinely being preyed on, and you as a parent don't understand, because you don't understand the game itself. There's tons of YouTube videos that break down what Discord is, what certain games are. There's tons of articles that try to break it down, but my suggestion would heavily be to sit with your kid. If your kid is a kid that plays video games all the time, sit and see what they're playing. Don't just give them a game like, hey, I know this is what you want. Sit behind them and genuinely see, what are you doing? What is this video game? And if it's something that you yourself are kind of like, I don't know if I want you to be involved in that, be involved, step into it. But definitely, and kind of taking back to what I said, do not let social media and the 3 different worlds parent your child. You parent your child. You brought the child into this world. You make sure that every step that they have, or try your best that every step that they have, they are okay and protected. And allowing them just basic access to all 3 worlds is not necessarily protecting. It's more so, kind of like I said, you don't want the world to be open to your child.
Understand?
That's it.
So we are coming to time right now, and I want to have us kind of close on going back to the wellness component of social media and just the balance of it. Because really, at the end of the day, it's about the balance of the screen life, and that's not going anywhere. So with social media, I'm just going to ask this one question, and I'll just go down the line, and we'll all, just give an answer to that. It's, how do we distinguish between freedom of speech and dangerous propaganda? And how do you make assessment of what it is that you know that is actual information that can be useful or dangerous? And do you know when to share it or when to ask questions about it? I'll start with you, Eli.
My rule of thumb is, if there's like a big thing going on, if I don't know what's going on, I'm not going to give my opinion on it. Because I might not know, I don't have enough information to share my opinion on it. So I don't want people to get mad at me for it, or obviously whatever I say, people are going to get mad at me for it, but I want to be able to, if I'm going to share something, I know everything about it, and I am confident, and I can back up what I'm saying. And I mean, you can say whatever you want, but if it's going to hurt people deliberately, it might not be the best thing to say. And if you're not able to think of every single question that someone could ask you, and if you're not able to answer it, you might not want to put it online, because you might put something out there and then realize later, oh, I didn't know that part about it, so I don't actually agree with what I said. But it's on there. Someone could look back and say, that's what you believe, but it's not what you truly think.
Yeah. It's the pressure of being well-informed, but at the same time, you could change your mind in the future, but just thinking forward about someone bringing it back up to you, what you might have said maybe 5 years ago or something like that. I understand. What do you feel?
So I feel so technically anyone can say anything. You have free will, and it's social media. It's very easy to put something out there. But I think with whatever you do post, it should be appropriate, truthful, and respectful to all age groups. So if you are putting something out there that is let's just say you're putting something out there about politics, and you're stating your opinion about something, completely fine, but then you get into a slandering position where you're slandering the other group or slandering anything else. I think that's where it can be very dangerous, and I think that's where it can get that's where harassment and can happen, and a lot of problems can form with that. So I think being careful with what you say and thinking before you say, again, when you say you had 5 days to process a photo, I think definitely, because it's very easy to just post something really quickly. So I think definitely being even asking your friends hey, should I post this? I think that's way better than just being okay, because it will be on there forever. Yeah.
Not being impulsive, really think about it and take the time, because we live in a society where we feel like we have to say something now.
Yep.
We're in the now age, but now may not be the right time.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's two things. One is that for my patients that I start when they're pretty young and my own family is to teach your children about sources and what's a reliable source, right? Information comes to us now from so many different places, and we need to teach our children how can they look at something and decide whether it's factual or not, and if they don't know, where can they go to find that out, right? So teaching them about sources. And my second thing about, posting, I had a high school civics teacher. He was the track coach. He was not thrilled about teaching anything other than being at the field and coaching track. But he said something in my civics class many, many years ago that one of the few things I still remember from high school. And he said, you have the right to say and do anything that you want until it imposes on someone else's right to say and be anything that they want. And I think if we teach our children that and ourselves, right, that just once again, if you're going to post something, you need to stop and say, I have the right to do this, but is that really going to impose on someone else's right to be who they are? So those are the two things that I would say.
I like that.
My rule of thumb would be to think, and what I again try to tell people is to think of your 3 most important people in your life, or 3 people in your life that you heavily respect. So for me, it's my pastor, my mom, and my supervisor, who is also here. But so think of the 3 most important people in your life. If what you're going to post online, you would not read in front of them, don't post it. That's kind of just the best way to do it. If what I post online, I will not read in front of Miss Janet or read in front of my pastor, I'm not going to post it, because say something happens and they still see it. You still have to own up to it, for one part. And then my second part would definitely be kind of piggybacking off of what Dr. Burke said. You have the free will and the freedom of speech to say whatever you want, but remember, so does everyone. Yeah. So if you are going to be willing to put your own opinion and everything out there, you need to also understand that there are going to be people that can read it and take it a certain way, that can read it and respond to it in a certain way. And there are also people that will read it, copy it in their mind, and wait till they see you in person to address it in person and take it into a whole different space. So I definitely heavily err on the side of remembering that just like you have freedom of speech, everybody else has freedom of speech, and don't post anything that you are not willing to say or read in front of the people that you respect most in your life.
Thank you. Well, that was a great way to end off this engaging conversation. I thank everyone for participating. I think for being here. I think one of the things that we can walk away with as we end the month of May on mental health awareness is that this is a conversation that just needs to keep happening, not just in these type of settings, but in our home. We need to start thinking about our digital world versus our in-person connections. Like I said, community connections and impact, that's what I live by, because what am I doing? How am I connecting to the communities? How I am impactful in what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And that's not just on social media, that's every day. And I think, again, with our teens and youth, we definitely have to have space and grace for them to learn to navigate this new world as we are, and they have to have that same thing for us as well. So I'm so thankful to be on a panel with such great diverse voices and opinions, and I think we all learn something from each other, and that we can go back and have these discussions in further detail, and hopefully we'll be able to have part 2. So thank you, and have a good night. You guys are amazing, man.
I just have to say, are all of your parents here? Because these two people are incredible.
Yes, they
Incredible
are.
young ladies.
Kudos to the parents.
Yeah.
Thank you. You made it on time. Oh, good. We got to take a group photo.